Along to the third episode of the Health Coach's Corner. I'm your host, Hannah Roan, and today we have the most phenomenal guest joining us, Indre Green. I want to hand it over to yourself to introduce you, all of the bits and pieces that you get up to, and then we'll get into the crux of the conversation today. So, wanted to say a huge thank you for being here. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on your third episode of the podcast. So, I'm a menstrual health and cyclical living coach, which essentially means that I help menstruating beings align to their own unique infradian rhythm, which is a technical term for your menstrual cycle, eliminating PMS, helping to cultivate more energy, and just structure your whole life around your cycle to really optimize your mental, emotional, physical health overall. So it's a very beautiful concept of living.
Amazing. Absolutely. I can't wait to unpack all of what you've just said in a lot more detail. I'm really curious about what motivated you personally to become a menstrual health and cyclical living coach. What did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, to be honest, it kind of just I naturally flowed into it through the different kind of careers that I had in life. I mean, I've always been very passionate about health. Like I've always loved working out, eating healthy, having good, healthy routines. But, I'm 35 now. I just turned 35. And 10 years ago, when I was 25, I was very unaware of my menstrual cycle and the effects that it has on me. So, of course, I was experiencing the mood swings, the low energy dips, the painful periods, heavy periods, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, this is all part of being a woman.
Yeah.
But I think as I was teaching English, I became well, my degree in psychosocial studies really helped me understand the psychological and sociological aspects and effects on the mind and the society and vice versa. So that kind of triggered a little bit of interest in how we function as humans in a society. Then I was teaching English for a couple of years, which I loved because I love teaching. I love sharing knowledge that I know. But then it kind of converted. I did my yoga teacher training, and during that qualification, I studied a lot about the physiology and anatomy of the body, where it just all kind of linked and made sense. I was like, okay, so our bodies have a huge impact on our mental, emotional, physical well-being. And as I started I mean, I've always practiced yoga myself, but once you study something and you really understand it, I delved really deep into doing the whole meditations every day and mindful movement and just really paying attention with so much awareness to my own menstrual cycle that and understanding the anatomy and physiology of it, it just kind of connected. So I started to eat even healthier, work out in alignment with my own menstrual cycles, read a lot of books about it. So a lot of it was kind of self-taught. And the more I practiced it on myself, the more my health got better. And when COVID happened, I couldn't teach yoga in person anymore. And I was toying with the idea of becoming an online yoga teacher. But I was like, no, I can do more. Like, I love teaching. I love, the whole biological aspect. And after practicing myself, living cyclically, I managed to eliminate PMS. My mood swings were a lot more manageable. And I just felt more comfortable in my own skin. So it just kind of made sense to train around that area and become, a menstrual health and cyclical living coach because women need to know this. Menstruating people need to be very aware of how to use their superpower, their
Yeah.
menstrual cycle.
Absolutely. Wow. Indra, thank you for taking the time to talk through that. I think to your point, the exploration you had through yoga and kind of almost like the spirituality associated with the body and
100%.
understanding, we're raised in a society, particularly from a medical perspective, where we're really encouraged to approach the mind and body as two separate entities. And it couldn't be further from the truth. It couldn't be further from the reality of our day-to-day existence.
Exactly.
And honestly, zooming in a little bit on that point around that, menstruating beings need to know, because a lot of the things that I'm sort of passionate about in this area, and particularly around the disservice that women, young girls in particular, are at the hands of really in our own education system. And we're not taught about these things at the age that we should be taught about them, and then become shameful and stigmatized, so we don't talk about them, and we just sort of think, oh well, to your point, we have to just put up with this. This is
Yeah,
just what it's like to be a woman, you know?
yeah,
And that is something that is really damaging. And I
very.
think kind of re-owning and redefining that narrative for ourselves is something that is really, really important. So
Yeah.
if I wanted to go about doing that, without launching into like one of your coaching sessions, if I woke up tomorrow and wanted to understand how to live cyclically, where would I begin? Like, what would I do?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Just backtracking a little bit, what you said about the way we're brought up and made to believe that your cycle is a burden. It's something that you should be, when I first got my period, I remember my mom telling me about it, and she was like, now you have to track it so you don't get these embarrassing moments for when your bleed comes and you're not prepared for it. And I was like, oh, I should be embarrassed about this, like these are the ways that we're brought up and taught to believe. It's this whole, self-negative talk around our cycle, which is what creates that friction and just doesn't do us any favors. So yeah, completely agree. And there needs to be a whole massive shift in the way we educate the younger girls before they even have their first periods to understand what it means. And yeah, so cyclical living is a concept of, I mean, at school, we are taught about the cycles of the seasons within a year, right? So we have 4 different seasons that we experience, the weather changes and what happens around, the world. We learn about these kind of cycles. And we live in so many cycles in our lives, but we're just not taught to connect how we fit into it in a way. So yeah, cyclical living is essentially living in line with the cycles. So just use an example for an analogy. In winter, you're probably not going to wear your shorts and t-shirt outside because it just doesn't make sense. You're going against what the nature has intended for you to. You're going to dress your body appropriately to live in line with the cycle that you're in that season. Vice versa, in summer, you're probably not going to wear your big puffer jacket because it just doesn't make sense. You'll be too hot. So yeah, cyclical living is something that we are very aware of, but we don't make the link, the connection of how we are connected to it and how to live with it. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also I like the link to the seasonality of it.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think that makes it sort of a lot easier, a lot more accessible. But on a practical level, where would somebody start if they wanted to begin to live a little bit more cyclically? Like, does it start with tracking? Does it start with like, where does it begin?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, ideally, a lot of we take a lot of contraceptives, which are kind of what blocks us from being connected to our own natural cycle. So, first things first, if you are on contraceptives, is to get off of them and find your natural cycle. Allow for your own menstrual cycle to begin. So, yes, tracking is the first step because if you don't track something, you don't know where you are at. In the same way that we use a yearly calendar to track the seasons, the months, the days, the weeks, we as menstruating beings should be tracking our menstrual cycle, which is every month, and where we are in each of the phases, because then you have a foundation of just understanding where you are at, because then you know how to cater to your body's needs if you are tracking it. So yeah, first of all is eliminating all contraceptives which are going to stop your cycle from being in its natural flow, and then tracking it to know where you are.
And through that tracking, what is it other than, is there like then another step where you start to perhaps pay more attention to what your body feels like at certain times in the month? Like, what does that then start to look like?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, this is kind of the structure that I run through in my coaching programs. With the first month is we track your cycle and we educate you around each phase and what your body needs for each of the phases. And it's not just your physical body, it's your mental, emotional, and the capacity that you have for each phase has its own superpower, its own strength. So it's tracking it and having an educational sort of session around it to really understand what happens, you know, how can we cater to our body to really optimize our overall well-being. So tracking and educating yourself around it.
Right. I think that is it sounds very accessible, but I think in practice and some of the things and some of the barriers that I've run up against is actually making not just making the time for it, but also then really understanding that what I'm doing is actually going to benefit me. So I've tracked my cycle for a while, and that sounds very cynical. Let me explain.
Mm-hmm.
And I know where the cynicism comes from, and it's something that I now genuinely believe is helpful. But there's this innate cynical voice, I would say, in my head, and it's because I haven't been raised with this information, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my template is shut up and put up with it. Was get on with it. You won't, So I definitely come up against that voice quite a lot. But the experiences that I've had with tracking, I definitely have more of an idea of when my phases are now, which does actually really help me. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I think the biggest thing that I take from it is it provides me with an explanation as to why I might feel a certain way on a certain day. And it helps me to really feel like a sense of security, honestly, that no, this is what your body is going through right now. There isn't something catastrophically wrong with you or your life. It's just you're in this phase of your menstrual cycle. So that is very much where I'm at. Um, and I think for me, the level up would be, okay, well, then how do I start to balance my hormones? How do I start to use my diet as a tool to improve gut health and therefore, menstrual, the experiences you have on your menstrual cycle, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I also feel like those barriers, if I were to sit down and chat with some of my friends, those things would be elements that came up for them. Like, I don't have the time to do it. I don't really know what I'm doing.
Mm,
Um, and I'm almost like not convinced that this is actually going to do anything. But then, of course, there are people like yourself
mm,
that are clear products of it really, really working. So,
mm.
what would you say to individuals that maybe have that cynicism or don't make the time for it and come up against those barriers? What would your like pitch be to those people, and how would you go about convincing them that this is a good thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, totally. In the patriarchal society that we live in, we are totally forced into telling ourselves to just get on with it because that's what, just tracking back a little bit with the different kind of rhythms that we have in our bodies. We have the circadian rhythm, which is a rhythm that both males and females have, and it's our 24-hour inner biological clock, which governs the way that we sleep, how our energy levels are throughout the day, and everything that affects our daily functioning. So the menstrual cycle changes throughout the month, so whereas say men, for example, they don't have that, so they just function on the same rhythm every day. They are the same every single day, like the evergreen trees that stay green throughout the year. They are the same every day, whereas we fluctuate, so we have the beauty of changing through it. And yeah, we are taught to just ignore it, be like, oh yes, your menstrual phase is something that's really difficult, it's a burden, it's unpleasant, you feel low on energy, and you totally have this conversation with yourself of like, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? Like, this is not normal, something is wrong with me. Like, and it's this inner dialogue that you end up beating yourself up over and not accepting that this is all part of the cycle, this is all part of the process, and you should be okay with it because actually you are experiencing a different kind of emotion that you wouldn't be able to. It's a case of learning to understand and honoring. Like, the hardest thing for me, I think, in the first year was to catch myself having this conversation, this negative conversation with myself, and tell myself it's okay. Be compassionate with yourself, be kind to yourself. And this is where the feminine and the masculine, the yin and yang energies are so off balance because we are so living in our yang, in our masculine energy, that we're forgetting to honor our feminine energy and just slow down and be loving and be compassionate and be emotional. Because actually, it is a beautiful thing, you know. We're just taught it's not because men don't get it. So they're like, okay, she's crazy, but it's not true. We're just so much, we have so much more than just the one functioning energy, if you will. And yeah, it definitely needs to be learnt how to live with and embrace it, but more so, it just allows you to tap into those emotions, your intuition. It is a more spiritual practice in a sense, but women have that power to be able to do that more than men. That's why there's more women's circles. That's why there's more women healing, because we have that innate power to tap into our intuition and let our inner guidance, if you will, your menstrual cycle, the emotions that come up and the feelings that we feel, helps to guide us and redirect us into a certain path that is going to better our health and our well-being and our understanding of the world and balance the yin and yang energies to create more harmony. Because if we just all lived in our yang masculine energy like we are forced to, we burn out, we feel crazy, and we shut ourselves off completely from our cycle, and then we have these PMS. If you're having period problems, this is your body talking to you, telling you there's something wrong. It's not there is something wrong with you. You're doing something that is not good for you, and that's probably ignoring your cycle. So yeah, we could rant on about that.
Please do. Oh, this is the time and the space to do it. Absolutely. I think it's a gorgeous way of looking at it, and it really brings that kind of spiritual energy to the conversation, which I do think is overlooked, and I think is often dismissed actually, as being sort of, you know, this intangible, a little bit aloof, really difficult to understand and live by. But actually, to your point there around slowing down, are really related to the point of you know, living in this crazy sort of rat run, especially in the corporate world where I've just spent the past sort of 8.5 years, which is very, yeah, got the scars as well, um, and really living in such male-dominated environments, you know, is very, very difficult then because
Mm.
yeah, to your point, you are sort of encouraged and that those messages that you're taught as a child is then sort of they're perpetuated and there is no that feels like there's very little room to actually
Yeah.
change course and change direction, which I think then becomes just super frustrating.
Yeah.
Um, with regards to period pain, so again, this is something that I just thought was part of having a period,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yep.
only over the past couple of months that I've really started to do a little bit of research into it, obviously talking to wonderful people like yourself as well, which sort of reaffirms the things that I've read. Um, we're taught that period pain is just being on your period. That just comes with it. And it's part of it. What was your first sort of, did you have a eureka moment, or was there like a first realization of like, oh my God, I have a say in this. It must have been incredible. I can't imagine what that felt like for the first time.
Yeah, I think I realized because I mean, I was experiencing painful periods, but they weren't like I remember when I was at school, because I got my period quite late. I was maybe like 15, nearly 16 when I got my period, and a lot of the girls had it younger. And I remember in PE class, they were constantly like, "Oh, I can't do PE because I have my period is painful," you know, and I was like, "What is that?" So when I did get my period, it was okay. I didn't get much pain, but then the more I started to I want to say sadly, abuse my body with, eating unhealthy. It's when I started drinking alcohol, and that's when my body was like, oh, what are you doing to me? So I didn't have as really, really painful periods as I would have expected to, what I've heard from my friends from their younger years, having periods from younger. But it came and went. It came and went. And then I kind of, when I got into yoga and started to really pay more attention to what I'm eating, how I'm exercising, it just got easier. And then I remember there was a few months, and it is to do with the whole hormonal balancing. There was a few months where, if I was going through, I don't know, I remember this once, quite a dark time in my life, if you will. I was going through a hard breakup, and it just felt like the whole world was crumbling around me. And I got into not looking after myself. I was eating crap, going out drinking all the time, and like feeling really rubbish about myself. And that's when my periods were so, so much more painful. And I was like, not really connecting the dots until I got out of that horrible feeling and started to take care of myself again, and cut out the drinking, eat healthier again, and get into working out. My periods came back to normal. It was just like, you can feel a sensation, of course, your body is shedding, but it shouldn't be a painful shed. Um, so yeah, it was kind of like through those difficult times of my life that I started to realize, okay, if I do this, this is the result of this. If I do this, this is the result of that. So just, yeah, having those moments really made me think, I'm doing this to myself. I'm causing my own periods to be painful. It's not natural, it's not normal, because some months I'm okay and some months I'm not. So it's just, yeah, when you make the link and when you start to realize that you're doing it to yourself. I went through a cycle of feeling really guilty and like ashamed of myself. Why have I done this to myself? But you kind of have to go through that, don't you? In the way that, like the pendulum swings, like you have to go to one end to feel the other. You have to be happy to feel sad and so on. So yeah, I had those moments. I think when I was going through a breakup at that one point in my life, when I just completely self-sabotaged myself and my periods were super painful, they were heavy. I was breaking out into spots and all the things that come with PMS, they were 10 times worse than what they would normally be. So I just realized I'm doing it to myself.
And really the intrinsic link there between sort of lifestyle and the way that you were living,
Mhm.
understandably, by the way, going through something. And I think there has to be some kind of allowance and some kind of grace towards yourself and the space that you were in. I think we all go through those times. And if I think to my own experiences, definitely in periods of high stress at work, I would find that my periods were just almost unbearable at times.
Mhm.
Like horrendous cramping and not being able to sleep, particularly at night for some reason. I
Mhm.
found them really, really disruptive. And then, of course, you don't sleep, so you're tired, you become more stressed, and it's like
Another vicious
all of,
cycle.
all of these cycles that you get into. Um, and going back to your point a couple of minutes ago around, um, being kind to yourself and allowing, and I also think there's something around developing ways to cope with stress, because of course stress is unavoidable,
Yeah.
but actually invest in time and energy into figuring out, okay, this is how I feel when I'm stressed in this situation, that situation. How can I best manage myself? And what
Mhm.
responsibility can I take for the
Yes.
way that these experiences impact me? And I actually think that that is really empowering when you get to a space where you're like, no, actually, I can control this. I can control how this impacts me. Um, Obviously, I can't necessarily control every situation in my life, and nor do I want to. But definitely in those periods of high stress, like you mentioned. So then you refer to eating healthier, you refer to mindful movement. I
Mhm.
wondered what that looked like to you. As you know, I'm training to become a health coach. A lot of the focus is on diet and nutrition, especially around like blood sugar balancing. That's something that I'm about to start learning all about. Super excited. What does that look like for you? Because I do think it's something that is used. I'm not suggesting this is how you're using it, but I think definitely on certain kind of like online
Mhm.
platforms, eating healthily, has a little bit become either a throwaway comment
Mhm.
or something that people don't actually understand, like what it means.
Yeah.
I understand eating healthily as eating for my body and what my
Mhm.
body wants.
Mhm.
Um, what does that look like for you? Is that also your experience?
Yeah, you're so right. It's completely different for everyone in a way. And I love that you're learning about blood sugar levels, because that is such a huge, like, important thing to know and understand. But yes, so healthy eating, everybody experiences differently. For some, it may be, oh, I'll have, no bun in my burger, which doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. It depends on how it's prepared and how it's cooked and what are the ingredients in it. So my version of healthy eating is to eat for your cycle, which means going back to being able to track your menstrual cycle so you know which phase you are at and understanding what your body needs during each phase. Because your menstrual phase, for example, when you are losing a lot of blood, you're losing a lot of iron, and you need to eat foods that will replenish those levels of iron that you are losing. So it's a concept of eating cyclically. that's exactly why me and my partner are creating this beautiful, beautiful cooking show, Cyclical Cooking, for couples to help people, in a relationship with a menstruating being, to cook together healthy meals for your menstrual cycle to replenish the needs of your body that are being depleted, or stuff like estrogen regulation. You can do all that through foods, and it's just understanding what your body needs for each phase and giving it that exactly. And it goes from anything, different ways of preparing the foods, different types of foods, and yeah, your metabolism is more more intense. Your metabolism is faster in some certain phases than others, so you need more food or you need less food. So yeah, for me, eating healthy is eating cyclically for your body in a similar way how it is for you, but it's just more for each specific phase to cater what your body needs.
And are there, oh, sorry, Indra, were you going to add
No.
something? Oh, awesome. And are there similarities across different people's menstrual cycles? And what I mean by that is, are there certain sort of food groups and it's different for everybody, of course, but like in the luteal phase, for instance, is there something that the body is going through that would require, more of a presence of carbohydrates, for instance, or kind of what does that look like
Yes,
practically on
exactly.
a day to day? Yeah.
So let's use the luteal phase, for example. It is the phase before you menstruate, and this is where we normally get the cravings. We're like, oh, I want to eat everything. I want that pizza. I want that chocolate. And this is normal for your body to feel that way because your metabolism is faster. You need more fuel during this phase. So don't feel guilty if you are feeling more hungry in your luteal phase. It's natural for your body to feel that way. But yes, it's a case of consuming more slower burning carbs that are going to keep you fuller for longer. Stuff like oats, and just having an extra snack of nuts and seeds in that phase is going to help you sustain your energy levels and keep that sugar craving at curb, because this is the phase where your body needs more. So it's okay to eat more. It's just being mindful of what you're eating, because if you are going to be eating a lot of sugary stuff and processed foods, it's not going to keep you fuller for longer, and it's going to affect your menstrual phase and cause more painful periods, more, acne and whatever skin conditions that come up. So yeah, it's natural. It's just understanding what your body, how your metabolism works throughout the cycle and giving it that exactly. So yes, it's definitely learning how to eat for your cycle.
Giving yourself the permission, right? I think that's where my mind went to then when you said it's okay to feel hungrier.
Mhm.
Definitely as a cisgendered woman, just being a body in the world and being really self-conscious at different times in my life about how I look and how much I weigh and all of those things, that I think all of us have got some relationship with. I've definitely found myself, it's certainly in my luteal phase, feeling incredibly hungry and just denying myself the food
Mhm.
that my
Mhm.
body so clearly needs because
Yeah,
I'm like, well, I'm not normally this hungry. So
yeah,
and I don't want to gain any weight, and which
yeah.
is another issue altogether. Um, but and I think the confidence comes from the knowledge and the understanding of your body and actually taking the time to sit with your body,
Yeah,
and pay attention to what it feels like at certain points during your cycle is something that we
yeah,
keep returning to.
yeah.
Um, with regards to the preparation of food there, that's also something that we cover in a lot of detail.
Mhm.
We are, sorry, there's background noise. Can you hear it?
No, all good.
It's super annoying. It's gonna be fun for the edit. Anyway, no, that we are told to really think about food in every form. So
Mhm.
not just the food on your plate and sort of how you balance out the different sort of major food groups and stuff, but also the preparation of it.
Yeah,
And when you go out to eat at a restaurant, understanding that there are so many things that you don't have control over. And I'm obviously still go out and eat at restaurants, right?
yeah.
That's not the
Every
message.
now and then. Okay.
But the message is really thinking about the quality of the ingredients that you eat. Is that something that you've also taken into consideration with your cooking show?
Yes, totally. So I mean, obviously it's a case of tracking your carbs, your macros, your proteins and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's yeah, the way you prepare the food essentially breaks down how the food is digested to make it easier for your body to digest, whether it's, baked or raw vegan diets. This is the beauty of cyclical eating. I think you can literally experiment with 4 different types of diets within a month, without getting bored of it. Because it's not like a lot of people go on diets to, lose weight or whatever it is that to cleanse or detox and whatever. However, it can feel quite restricting if you're just sticking to one diet and feeling like you're depleting yourself. The beauty of eating cyclically is you experience 4 different types of diets within a month because the 4 different phases that you go through. And yes, within the cooking show, that's definitely something we've considered. And, the way you prepare the food helps your body digest it easier a certain way to absorb the nutrients and all the vitamins from the food, because that's just how your body changes the way that it functions in that phase. So yeah, preparation of food is very, very important. How it's cooked, it's going to help to maximize your absorption of the nutrients and vitamins from it.
I honestly can't wait to see what the cooking show looks like. I know everybody listening to this is really curious as well.
I'm so
Um,
excited to share with
so
everyone else. It's so
excited.
fun.
It's going to be awesome. I wanted to then kind of bring the conversation into its last little segment around the real really coming back and circling back to that point around the real barriers that menstruating beings face when they come to try and understand their own cycle. Um,
Mm.
what are some of the things that you see, not but potentially within your client groups, but also just out in the world, around the common things that come in between an individual sitting down and actually starting to live cyclically?
They don't have time. They don't have the interest because, a lot of us have been made to believe that this whole menstrual cycle thing is such a taboo topic. It's such a, you don't talk about it, no one really cares about it. And that's the whole point. The reason why nobody talks about it is because it's been pushed aside so much because all the research, biologically and medically for the health reasons has been done on men, not on females. And the fact that there is this huge lack, that's why there's a barrier, because there's a lack of understanding, there's a lack of education around it. And yeah, most people find don't have the time because they're so caught up in their busy lives. But then, when they kind of start to understand or just pay attention to start tracking their cycle, and like what you said for yourself, just understanding that you're in this phase and that's what you're supposed to feel, and it's okay to not beat yourself up. The main thing is, yeah, that the barriers are the inner dialogues that people are having with themselves, the self-negative talk, not finding time, or just accepting that painful periods are a normal thing. So they drown themselves out with painkillers or contraceptives. And it's just such a huge disconnection from our bodies and the natural cycle that it goes through. It's really, really like horrible to see because we're just neglecting ourselves. We're not giving ourselves any love. And it's just not good for our health.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more.
Mm,
Um, and I think there's such a lack of encouragement from all of our external stimuli as well
mm,
to really kind of take the time to start to understand ourselves on that level, And imagine if we were taught this at school. I was just having a
no.
thought there, like, we're 10, 11 years old and we're taught how to live cyclically. I mean, what a
Mm,
world. What a
mm,
world that would
yeah.
be, how different our lives would be. And that's why I think the work that you do is so, so important because I don't think it's never too late to start
Yeah.
to understand your body and to start to really get to grips with how this can impact you on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
Um, in the interest of really getting an understanding of the services and the programs that you provide, an individual listening to this might be like, okay, fine, you've convinced me. I wanna have a coaching session. I want to understand. I want to embark upon a program. I want to invest this time and resource into myself. What would that look like? What would a program that you offer look like, and how would that work?
Yeah, so I normally do a 3-month one-on-one coaching program because it's not going to happen within a month. Let's be real, first you have to track your cycle, and the first month is going to be just finding your feet. The second month, you'll have a little bit more foundation. By the third month, you will already feel confident enough and you have the educational background, education behind you to understand what's happening. You'll be starting to eat cyclically and work out cyclically. So it's a 3-month one-on-one coaching program. It's really personalized to your own needs because no two menstrual cycles are the same. And it's a matter of having the first session will always be a deep dive into your lifestyle. What are you doing? What are you not doing? What's working for you? What's not working for you? What do you need to change? What is the main thing that's bothering you? How can we do this? How can we eliminate that and replace it with the dream life that you want? And yeah, so I do one-on-one coaching for 3 months with individuals. And I also like to do free 14-day energizing habits challenge. So I do that. I run that sort of every couple of months when I feel called to. And that essentially is just a group of women, menstruating beings who really want to cultivate more energy, because that is the biggest thing that we feel we never have enough of. We don't have enough energy to do everything that we really want to do. There's never enough time. So I do these free challenges for 2 weeks for menstruating beings to help us change certain habits to feel more energized. So keep an eye out for that. I normally run that through on Instagram. So you can follow me on Instagram if you want to find out more, joining those challenges. But otherwise, just, yeah, reach out to me and get in contact.
Awesome. Indra, thank you so much. And I will, of course, link all of your socials and all of the wonderful work that you do in the bios of both the YouTube version of this. And of course, if you're listening on Spotify, it will be there as well. I wanted to bring this conversation to a close by saying how much I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to come here and share all of your wonderful wisdom, and the energy that you bring to these topics, I think really starts to add that level of accessibility that is missing, I think, in a lot of the narratives around this stuff. It actually feels attainable, it actually feels like something that individuals, normal, everyday menstruating beings can actually access and can actually start to benefit from themselves. So that's
Yeah,
incredible work, because I do think that these topics can appear very complex at their face value.
yeah.
But actually somebody like yourself really bridges that gap between it being a concept and something that can actually impact somebody's life. So I think that's absolutely incredible. Thank you so, so much for your time.
Thank
Uh,
you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here and talk to you about all this because, yes, it's super important and it doesn't need to be so complicated because the term, even infradian rhythm, is not heard of. Menstrual cycle is the simplified term that we use every
yeah.
day. And yeah, it can be super beneficial for young and older. I have a client who's actually 42 who is loving life now because just through understanding her cycle. So yes, it's never too late.
Never too late. What a wonderful story as well. I'm sure you're having such an incredible impact on her
Mm.
life. That's just awesome. Indra, thank you so, so much. And to you, the listener, thank you for listening to the
Thank
third episode of the Health Coaches Corner. Stay tuned for more. There'll be more interesting guests coming your way.